Hello, everybody. I'm Yanette Hollingsworth, your host, and welcome to the Model Teacher Podcast. So let's get straight into it. After our last episode, you guys had really fantastic questions for me, and I've been getting questions on and off anyway. But some of them really seem to be really valid and answers that you needed and some more information from me, your girl. So basically, one of the questions that I got was, what is early intervention, first and foremost? Because a lot of people weren't familiar with what that exactly is and how that may help their child. So early intervention is a system of services and supports that are designed to help young children, typically aged between birth and 5 years old, with developmental delays or disabilities. So if a child is not meeting their developmental milestones, there are certain things that we expect them to do between 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months. And if they're not doing those things, then that's classed as a developmental delay. And so supports can be put in place by your pediatrician or by you, obviously, to tackle any of these concerns that you may have. So those services include identifying and addressing any developmental delays or disabilities, and that's usually done by a case manager, and usually that referral is initiated by your pediatrician or your child's caregiver if they attend a preschool or a daycare. You can even activate these services yourself by telling your pediatrician, hey, I've got some concerns, can we please do a referral for some early intervention therapies? And then they provide those therapies, and it can be speech therapy if they're not babbling or making the sounds they're supposed to. It can also include occupational therapy, which is also, sensory processing and kind of understanding their body. And then we have physical therapy, which some babies and children need. And then they also offer support to families with resources and guidance on how to support your child at home, things that you can do to work alongside your children's therapist. And it enhances your child's development, which ultimately promotes their readiness for school when they get to that stage, whether they're starting school in a pre-K program at 3 years old or they're starting at a kindergarten age at 5 years old. The great thing about early intervention is if your child gets these therapies right at the right time and they get them early enough, they have the capacity and the ability to not need therapy once they reach kindergarten. So I have seen that. I have worked with families and children who have received early intervention from as young as 18 months, depending on what their needs are, and they have not needed therapy after that once they've reached the kindergarten stage. I've also worked with children and families with babies who are fresh out of the hospital. They can be as young as 3 days old. And that's because they're either born premature and the hospital wants to make sure that after they're released from hospital, I should say 3 days from their hospital stay, or being discharged from the hospital, I might start to see them. And when I see them, it's because of premature birth or because they were born drug dependent and are now in the foster care system. And so I come in to give them therapies to help with some of their needs. Some of the needs that children from as young as, say, a month old, and I see them 3 days after they've been discharged from hospital. One of the things that I find is common in that age group is something called torticollis. And that basically is a condition where the neck muscles are so tight and shortened, not just in the neck, but I've noticed it in other places too, but mostly in the neck, causing the head to tilt or for them to have a limited range of motion for feeding or turning. And it happens in babies, and it's often due to, could be birth trauma, it could be limited range of motion while they're in the womb. It could also be because of drug dependency or just the development of the muscles and conditions they may have been exposed to in the womb during a parent or their mother being dependent on drugs, unfortunately. And the symptoms are that limited range of motion. The head could be looking flat in one particular area and they're just not able to turn, or they prefer to feed on one side because it looks like it's easier for them. So a parent not knowing will continue to feed the child on that side. When that happens, we're reinforcing that torticollis. So what I would come in and do is a lot of stretching, a lot of massaging, and a lot of using feeding time, especially. It's a great way to entice babies to turn and use the other side. I would entice them to go on their other side. There's also positioning that I would do for them to help strengthen those muscles. And then I would teach the parents to also do this. So when our session is finished and I'm gone, they're then able to support their child in that way for themselves. And then they can share this with families and grandparents. And it's nice because what we see then is when everybody is doing the same thing, you'll be amazed that I could come back the next session and that child is doing, the development is so great that I know that in another 2 weeks, I'm not going to need to worry about that. And when they visit the pediatrician or they go back for their physical therapy evaluation, that's going to be something that shows progress or it's a goal that we've met. So that's definitely been probably what a sweet spot for me, working with them babies when they're just so tiny and so little. But then seeing them grow from birth in that first year of life, their growth and the things that they're able to overcome and do is just always such a blessing to see. So another question I got from you guys was, let's go into the emails here. What's the biggest myth about early intervention? I think the biggest myth about early intervention is, does it really work? Um, and I think that a lot of people say, give the baby time. They're just a baby. Everyone develops differently. And that is true, absolutely. And sometimes we do need to give them time. I never encourage a parent who seems to want their child to be an overachiever to go into early intervention, right, or to seek it. If your child is developmenting as they should, that's not a necessity for them, right, or a resource that they necessarily need. But the myth that, for example, if your child is not speaking or making sounds or babbling at 6 months old or saying mama and dada, that's something I want you to have a conversation with your pediatrician about. And if your pediatrician says to you, hey, you should hold off, wait a minute, just give them time. And now you've waited and now you've got to 12 months old and we're still not gotten any sounds, or we're just getting a lot of crying because now that's the form of communication. We've just lost 6 months of therapy that could have been had. And in 6 months, not to say the child could necessarily be cured because we don't know what the diagnosis is, but they're more likely to make that gain and more likely to have success and possibly not need therapy because we addressed it at 6 months rather than waiting 12 months, right? Um, so the fact that the myth is, does early intervention really work? Should we just leave these babies alone to develop as they should? And I do believe that is a myth. I think that we should give the professionals the opportunity to look at the babies, look at the children, and make that decision. I think that pediatricians are a wonderful help and they are there to serve you and your family and especially your child, but they are not specialists in a particular field. So if I say that I'm concerned about my child's speech and a pediatrician says to wait, my pushback is going to be, thank you for your opinion. I value that, but I still want the specialist in that field, the speech pathologist, to give me that guidance, because ultimately they're the specialist, right? So a pediatrician is looking at the whole child. A speech pathologist is looking at the speech, my child's oral motor function, is my child's mouth structured correctly to support speech and things like that. So I think that it is not a myth. And I think that we should always try to promote and give our kids that best support that we can if we think that they're having struggles with their developmental milestones, so that we can set them up for success. And ultimately, it makes our parenting job slightly easier in the sense, or it just takes away another facet of that parenting. Like if I don't need to, if I can give my child, for example, therapy from birth to 5, that's wonderful. Or I could wait to 5 and then my child has to have therapy from 5 to 16. So I think early intervention is the way to go for sure. Mum does work. She works part time while her daughter is in a public school education setting that meets her needs. And outside of that, she doesn't have much support. Family really do help and step in, which is lovely, but it's still a struggle because family always has their own lives as well. And grandparents do what they can, but one set of grandparents lives out of state. So the help from family and outside, right, having that community can be a bit of a struggle. She does have a church community that do help her. And there is like a once a month respite so that she's able to do things like shopping, groceries, and just have some time to herself to do some personal things. And she gets that 2 hours or 3 hours every month, right? She reached out and was like, she's just getting to the point where she's hit burnout. And there's obviously a lack of sleep. Her daughter is still wearing diapers at 7.5, almost 8 years old. I met them, we did a consultation together and kind of just talked through their history and what's been going on and what, help they've been managing or able to get. And one of the things I said is I asked what the diagnosis was of her daughter, and she said the child's diagnosis was the top level of autism. And I said, okay, and what else? And she said that was it. Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose, but as being a professional, being an infant and toddler development specialist, being somebody that works with and has worked with more kids than I could possibly count, I can see that this child would benefit from genetic testing because there is more going on than autism because of her physicality, how she looks. So her head, your head is supposed to be in proportion to your body, and her head shape is not. The proportion of her arms to her body is also different. So to me, I would say that I would, I would want more neurological testing. I would want genetic testing. And I definitely would want to be referred to some specialists that can help us really identify exactly what um, the diagnosis of this child, because it is more than autism. And then that can also help mom access some more resources. The other thing I told her that she may be entitled to that she wasn't aware of at all and had no idea, and she's not the first parent that has said this to me, is Social Security benefits. If your child has a disability that is so severe that they need one on one attention, and for example, they are 8 years old or becoming, close to being 8 years old, but are still not able to do toileting and things like that, you are able to or should be able to access some kind of disability benefit depending on your income. And it varies from state, but it doesn't hurt to apply for Social Security if you can, even if they reject you. I had a family that were rejected initially, but then once they appealed and they got a lawyer, they actually were accepted. Their payment was backdated and they were able to access resources. Social services became involved, and not in a negative way. So don't think when social services become involved that it's going to be something negative and it's going to, kind of tear you down as a parent and tear your family apart. That is not always the case. Um, when social services got involved through the Social Security, it was actually to offer services and to help access services that are available in the community. They were also able to help her with insurance. So insurance was able to take off some of the costs of the things that that child needs medically, like diapers. Yeah, diapers. They cover that expense because that's a need for her and it's a medical need and something that she can't help. So, and she's also on medications. I said to mum, these medications, one being an antibiotic, concerned me because of the length of time that she's on this medication for. So, if it's to fight an infection, that's wonderful. But if it's to also prevent, if it's to fight and prevent, and we're using it to prevent, then there's going to be a point where she becomes immune to the antibiotic. So again, that's why it's important to ask questions and kind of do some research and hopefully just find a good person that can kind of help you navigate this system, because it is difficult. It is not advertised everything that you're what's available to you. Every state is different. Every county is different. So it's about finding somebody, and also Google advocates in your state, in your community, in your county. You'll be surprised. They do exist. They do have groups. They can give you resources. They can be lawyers in those groups. They could be psychologists, speech pathologists, and other professionals in that group that can help you navigate therapies and things that you can access for your child. So I really wanted to share that because that can really help a family. Like if your child is even has just a diagnosis of autism, they could be entitled to Social Security benefits, support, and resources. And that definitely is going to be helpful for parents who are experiencing burnout. Don't think you have to do it all on your own. Reach out to me if you need more guidance. I will try my best to help you, or at least point you in the right direction of somebody who can help you. Okay. Another one we got was, and mostly I want to cover early intervention in this episode. So, can early intervention really make a difference in outcomes? Gathering from what I've said previously, you already know, yes, it really can. Early intervention can make such a drastic difference that if you get your child early intervention, right, the brain forms the most from birth to 3. From birth to 5, it becomes permanent. So if we get early intervention while that brain is forming in that birth to 5 year range, we are setting our children up for success. And we're also setting ourselves up for success, right? That we are accessing a resource for our child that is really going to help them. And then we can see that when we, by us accessing that resources to help our child, then we're winning, right? We're getting them to where they need to be. We're not trying to change who they are. We are not trying to say that there's anything wrong with them. What we're saying is we want to make sure that we're setting them up for success, and we are not um, kind of supporting or promoting a speech delay if that's what they have, or if they physically can't do some things, why can't we get them some physical therapy? Why would we want them to be a 6 or 7 year old who physically isn't able to do some things because we didn't get them the help at 2 years old or 3 years old? So yes, outcomes are changed because of early intervention, and they're changed for the better. This one is, how do I explain special needs to siblings? This is one that I personally experienced because I've had to explain to um, our son's siblings, our other children, that our middle son, learns differently from you guys. He processes the world differently. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with him. That's just how God designed him. And it's such a beautiful thing to see how he sees the world. Sometimes we overcomplicate things, and he just simplifies it by the way he looks at things. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful to see him break down things and build them back up again, because that's just what he does. It's good to see the way that sometimes he stands back and observes before he decides to interact. And so we had to explain those things to our other children. So it helped them to be better siblings. And then when we are out in social settings, or when we are out with family, and when we're out with other groups, they are also aware of how other people respond to their brother. So if somebody, and we've never had this situation, but I'm confident that if somebody was going to be unkind to their brother, or made a comment about their brother, let's say they said something horrible like, "Oh, your brother's weird," or they said directly to my son, "You're weird," because that's what kids do, right? It's just a kid thing, it's not personal. Their brothers would step in, and not necessarily in a combative way, but in a way like, "No, he's not. Don't say that about my brother. We're going to stick up for him." But we also understand that this is who he is, and we love him for it, and we celebrate it. And so, to be fair, I love the fact that our son doesn't, he's just who he is, and he loves who he is, and we love that he loves who he is. And I think that is partly because we have explained to him how he processes the world, and we just don't treat him any differently, and we won't allow anyone else to either. And we do support his loves and his passions. So I do think that it is important to have that conversation. How you have it is, first, what I would do is, let's say, for example, the diagnosis of your child is autism. I would look up a child friendly video on YouTube, and I would put, um, you know, explaining to children what is autism for kids, what is ADHD for kids, and watch those videos and find one that's cartoon based if your children are young. And if you can relate to it, and you think your children, your other children, if you think that they like it, play that to them so that they understand what that is. Look up a video that talks about disabilities just amongst children in general, and discuss it as a family, pray about it as well. And then say, well, do you think you notice any of those qualities in one of your siblings, or even yourself, or even mum or dad? Like, we're not diagnosing, but this is just something that we're doing amongst our family. And then you can broach it and say, well, hey, this your brother or sister actually has this diagnosis too. Isn't that cool that they also have this diagnosis, and you guys, we didn't really know like an exact name for it, but this is how we're going to like love on them as a family, and how we're going to support each other as a family. And that's really it. You need to bring it down to your kids level, and you need to make everybody around you know that it is not a difference. It is not that something's wrong. It's actually a blessing. They're perfectly designed by God. Okay, he is the potter, they are the clay, and this is what God has created. And we're going to just love and learn, because I guarantee there is so much to learn from a child that has any form of disability, no matter how small, no matter how great the disability is. They teach you. And if you're prepared to learn, they'll take you on a wonderful ride. So I feel that that's something that's really important to share with their siblings. And ultimately, that will start gathering out into their friend group. And before you know it, you're building and creating a community that is going to go out into the world and just give love on anybody that may not look like them or act like them, and not even see them as anything different, but rather just see them as another beautiful creature on this earth. Just my opinion. Okay, let's do another one. One was personal. They asked, did my son receive early intervention? My son, who has an autism diagnosis, did not receive any early intervention whatsoever. And this is where disabilities can have you or unique abilities can have you fooled in a sense, right? Can have you questioning other people because your child doesn't look like this child and your child doesn't do that. So speech was never an issue for him. He talked early. Physical, he was walking at 9 months. I've got videos at 18 months where this kid used to climb up on a ladder and cook, but he had such refined, fine motor skills. He would get the tongs and he would flip bacon. 18 months. Like, kind of should have known then because that's kind of different, right? That's kind of like a gifted type thing um, to have that kind of skill. But also, I didn't know what I know now when he was 18 months. So this was God already working magic and weaving himself into these details and being like, we're going to unfold some things. But he never received early intervention. He went to daycare. He went to preschool. He did great. There was just things with focusing and you couldn't stay still for nothing. And loud noises sent him crazy. He's so much better now because I've worked with him and desensitized him. But yeah, it was a journey. But no, he never received any kind of early interventions, and he didn't actually get diagnosed until he was almost in first grade. Um, Again, it took me going to school, learning and recognizing things and seeing things in him and just really observing him to really figure out, hey, something else is going on. He's got a unique way of learning and looking at things, and he does things that other kids just can't do at his age, including cooking. And yeah, the journey continued. The journey started there. Okay, this is a good one. How do you balance pushing versus allowing growth for a child with delays? So I had a parent, for example, babies don't usually love tummy time and they can get fussy. So I've heard a lot of parents say we never do tummy time because they don't like it. They just cry and scream and they get really hysterical. And I say, then you need to push because then what happens is usually I'd say 7 times out of 10, I will come back and that baby needs the helmet because the head shape is they're starting to get the flat shape at the back because they're spending too much time on their back. They need time on the tummy. The sooner you get them on the tummy, the better. It can be 3 seconds. Get them on the tummy. It starts to alert and heighten their awareness from another angle from being on their stomach. So I would push that and let them cry for a little bit. It's okay for them to cry. Try and distract them. Try and make them laugh. Don't put them on their stomach if they're already crying. Do it when they're not crying. Start off really small for just a few seconds and pick them up so they know that this is not something they're going to be in a position forever, right? Give them that security that you're there. So you're down 3 seconds. I've got you up. I let you feel my heartbeat. I might rock you. You get a sense of comfort. And then we're going to go and do back on your stomach. Got you on your stomach. Now this time might be 5 seconds. Maybe in those 5 seconds you started to whimper a little bit. That's okay. I'm going to let you whimper a little bit. Let me see if I can go to 8 seconds. And then you're fully crying and pick you up, put you on my heart, give you a nice little rock, make you feel comfort, put you back down. And this is something you should be doing throughout the day. I'm not going to expect you don't want to put a baby on their tummy for an hour and have them crying and think that they're going to love tummy time. So it's just about gauging and observing your child and seeing what they can tolerate and just, doing it several times throughout the day. And eventually they're going to be pros. And before you know it, you're going to be like, Mrs. H, my kid's calling all around the place. And that's your fault because I get that a lot too. If you see hysteria though, and like real screaming and discomfort, then no, that's not what we want to see. And then we don't want to push that. Okay. If you start putting them down their stomach and they get to hearing they're crying, still put them down. If they start that cry right here, you don't want them crying here, if they start that cry as you're getting them to this position, just put them down and be like, oh, got you back up again. And we're distracting and we're cooing and we're talking. And then we're going to try again. What's this one? Oh, this is a personal one. How did you get over the damage caused from the domestic violence you experienced? That's a random throw in there from the team. Okay, so the team decided to throw in a random one. That has not to do with special education or to do with early intervention, but still important. And I think I should answer it because clearly you guys want to know, or someone does. How did you get over the damage caused from the domestic violence you experienced? Good question. Um, God, I think I've said it. I think I always say that, but I think I got to a point where I didn't realize how much of myself had been shaped um, by somebody else's actions, really. And so, because of that, I didn't really know who I was for a very long time. Um, but there was always something that drew me back to God. There was always people in my life that would draw me back to God. I had a great, I've got a great group of friends in New York. My sisters that just are not just my sisters in Christ, but they were great supporters of mine, cheered me along the way, supported me, saw me when I didn't see myself, along with my husband and my mom. My mom always poured into me, always told me what I could do, basically. And I think that God placed people in my life to help me and to give me support. I definitely had a lot of therapy. I really did, needed it because no matter what you do, you can do a lot of work independently, but you do need those professionals to kind of give you the guidance and to ask you those questions that need to be asked and kind of help you peel back layers of why you do things, why you are the way you are. Um, and so I had to do a lot of that work, a lot of soul searching, a lot of prayer. I'd spent a lot of time trying and figuring out what I wanted and going for it. Um, and courage, I had to find courage. I had to do a lot of things with fear. I did so many things petrified, and people didn't realize I was petrified. I didn't know how they didn't know I was petrified because I knew I was petrified, but okay. But I did a lot of things petrified, and I just think that God gave me the strength. I just always went before me and just um, gave me the strength and the mercy. And then he just placed people that would also help pull me through. Even the challenges that came, nothing came easy, nothing. Um, but he sustained me through all of it. And I just think to myself, wow, little old me, you worried about little old me, you're helping little old me. And so I don't take for granted what I do. I think that part of who I am and part of my understanding of all families of children and seeing children is because I was always so unseen. Sometimes I still am, but now I'm okay with it. Like, it doesn't bother me if people don't see me or if I'm in a room and my opinion isn't valued, then that means that room isn't for me. Took me a long time to know that, but I think doing the work, making sure you've got the right people around you, having people around you that are going to pull you back into the gutter, back into negative feelings, back into self doubt, having people that are nice, nasty to you. I had a lot of people in my life that were nice, nasty, that had to go. Okay, they had to go because in your face, even in your face, they'll say nice and negative things, right? They'll try and tear you down in certain ways when you're trying to do something to build yourself back up. So I think that getting rid of um, the hearts that are not genuine. And if you have to question it, if you're like, well, I don't know if that person, then they gotta go. They gotta go. Simple. And it's not a case that we're beefing. It's not a case that there's any ill will or anything like that. It's just that things look different with growth. And everybody, I'm not going to bring somebody along a journey with me if I see that their heart is not pure. You know what I mean? And if I see that they're not really for me. Um, I had to let go of that. And that was a lonely space. So I think it's just really being prepared to do the work, the alone time, um, and surrounding yourself with, people that are going to lift you up. And it's also good to connect with other women who maybe have had your same experience um, and are further along in their healing journey than you are, because they can also help with understanding and not feeling shame. So many women feel shame. And it's not something that you should feel, but it's just a feeling, that an emotion that you can't help. It's a reflex to it. Um, and I think just sitting in that, and I think also when you do think back of memories or incidents that happened in your domestic violence nightmare, because unfortunately that's what it is. I think changing one of the things a therapist told me was we're not going to look at those things as flashbacks. We're going to look at it as you're processing a memory. And I want you to sit in it and acknowledge that that happened, acknowledge that that was an incident, and then move on. Right? When you sit in there and when you sit in it and you let it re-traumatize you, that's giving the memory control and also giving that person back the control. You're going to turn those thoughts and those invading thoughts and those sometimes upsetting memories into something positive that you take control of. And once you start training the brain to do that, then it's part of regaining your control. So that's just a little tip, but it's a whole world out there. But I'm always happy to connect with a woman who is on that journey, really and truly, because that's super important to me. And especially if they've got children, because ultimately it's going to help you be a better parent and just feel better in your parenting journey. But I just want to say thank you to everybody for watching today. If you've got questions, you know what to do. Hit us in our inbox. You can send me an email at yanette@themodelteacher.com. And if you want to be a special guest on our show, then please inbox me or send us an email. We would love to have you up here. We want to share this platform with others. We want to get the conversation going. We want to keep it going. We want to shed light. We want to educate. We want to promote. Remember, we're not just here for the parents. We're here for the caregivers. We're here for the teachers. We're here for the administrators, the managers, the daycare providers, the grandparents. We're here for everybody. So thank you for listening. God bless.